so we're going to leave it alone.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Lynda Bazans, and I am a very grateful member of the Al-Anon family group. I'd like to just start off with a prayer, and the prayer includes the idea that we are all here together with our higher power, and hopefully He will guide us in what we need to say and give you listening ears for something that maybe you need to hear. So let's just be silent for just a moment and make that intention so that we can all be together. And I'm going to say the serenity prayer again. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Your turn.
She wanted me to go first. First thing I want to say is my wife is much nicer in public. We're sharing. We're trying to make it real. My wife is so less flawed than I am. She comes, and I mean that seriously, she comes about a natural spirituality and a natural organization. I am ADD. I'm kind of spring-loaded, head first, 40 miles an hour, no helmet. She is the spiritual center of our family, and which sometimes can be a pain in the ass, but it is mostly a healing energy that we all drink at. It really is. It just is a salve that permeates our marriage and permeates our family. She's a lover. I am so lucky I married a lover. I mean, that is a good thing. I want to talk a little bit about the problem, which is me. So we started with a lot of advantages. You know, we're both Catholic, both grew up in the parochial school system. We brought a similarity to life that is, you know, kind of a shared history, which is a real benefit, and that has been cool. And we met each other in college, and I had just drunk my way out of the University of Notre Dame. I came home, got fixed up with my cousin who was in nursing school with Lynda. Lynda's a psychiatric nurse, now in private practice at home. We have had 3 children involved in alcoholism and drug dependency, so we have been through a lot of life and in doing that. So I was a kid who, as one of my best friends said, I was born on third base and been congratulating myself for hitting a triple. I'm one of 7 kids. I have great parents. They educated all 7 of us in private schools. We didn't have debt when we got out of school, and we had great examples. I mean, that is, and she had the same thing, only she was an only child. Thus, she's spoiled and self-centered. But it is. So alcoholism. I started drinking at 13. I ended up drinking at 24. So people started telling me I had a problem when I was maybe 16 years old. I stood out. And so a drinking problem, whatever the hell that was, I didn't think I was drinking differently than my parents were the Second World War crew. They drank hard, they played hard, they worked hard, they made life look pretty attractive. We thought we were doing, us kids were doing the grown-up thing, copying them. But mine was different. I was under psychiatric care on and off for half a dozen years. And he said, my psychiatrist said, I think you're different. I think you're drinking more often. I think you're drinking with different people and you have more consequences. I thought I was just unlucky because I had more consequences. So I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. My gift, I loved AA from the moment I walked in the door. What is that? I mean, it is, how many people do we work with that just fight it every inch of the way? I loved it from the moment I walked in the door, which allowed me to stay. It's been hard to do the work, but it's been easy to stay because I have no place else to go. So then you start over a period of time. I didn't have a real good sense of my defects of character until about a year and a half. I was on a honeymoon for about a year. I was interested. My recovery was kind of external. My sponsor was this very active, lovely man. His wife was Lynda's sponsor. And so I'm very early talking, a 5-minute speaker at a meeting. I'm going to jails. I'm going to prisons. I'm doing the stuff that many of us, most active members of Alcoholics Anonymous do. And so when I started to get my list of defects of character, gambling. Okay, I'm making about as much money gambling as I am salary. We were salary. She made about $600 a month, $575 a month, and I made $550. Think of that today, as starting out as an RN and as a jerk. I mean, it is. That isn't much money. But rent was, $1.25 or $200 for the first apartment. It was 2,500 square feet with a fireplace, and we paid $150. I mean, my goodness, today that's a $400,000 condo. So over a period of the first 6 or 7 years in AA, I was an unhelpful husband. I spent more money than I made. I was angry and sometimes rageful. A gift from my dad, who was my hero. He was maybe one of the finest men I ever knew. But occasionally, and he and I were nose to nose. I was a gift to him. Brought it out, It just, and his father was that way. I'm third or fourth generation rager, So when you talk about the blessings of the program, that you get to heal different things. It isn't just the drinking that comes down. It's actually, but I'm unhelpful. I mean, she's working. She's getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning doing the nursing thing, and I'm unhelpful with the kids. I'm doing AA. Okay, every time something happens in AA, I want to be there. I don't want to miss anything. So my recovery is significantly external. I do not have great insight into the defects of character, but one by one they got handed to me. In about my 4th or 5th year of sobriety, they started to eat my lunch. Okay, it is. In about somewhere between our 7th and 8th year of recovery, we both had a meltdown. I had a second surrender. Lynda had. Lynda would tell you that she had her first surrender. We were going to conferences like this. Bob and Marceline, Chuck and Elsa, the different people that were going, and we'd be in the front row in tears from the moment the meeting started. And it was because we were hearing something that was touching our soul, and there were changes to be made, places to go, and we weren't there, and we were hurting each other. She wasn't hurting me, but she was being hurt, and I know. And I had a great example. I mean, in my family, if you mistreated women, you better leave. So that's a gift. A lot of people don't know a lot of guys don't know how to treat women, but I had examples with my sisters and my mom. And I'm not doing well with this. And so our story of relationship is kind of what happened after my second surrender and what she would describe as her first surrender. It opened our hearts. It changed the way we saw things. It was transformational. It was not just, it was more like a sex change operation than an improvement. I mean, it really was a internal reorganization. It was, And when that happened, we got a new pair of glasses. And you start seeing things differently. So I will tell you in my when I get to 6 and 7, we're with trouble when you do workshops. You do most of your stuff when you do the workshop, and then when you get your talk to give your story, you don't know what the hell to say. But it was, almost automatically, I gave her the checkbook. Almost automatically, I started dating my wife, on Friday nights. A real live, romantic, no one else, get dressed up, go to dinner, not a movie. And, you started doing things that were seminal, that were, really different. And so, God bless the program. If there's anything that I want to come out of this meeting, so I got a call from a guy that I'm sponsoring. I've known since the day he walked in. He's a big, tatted up, handsome chick magnet who makes a lot of money. This guy is, and he's got this lady, and he just bought an engagement ring. So I hope they won't get this taped. So she doesn't know about this yet. So
Don't use the name.
I'm not going to use a name. God damn it! Leave me, back off. It is. But he calls me up and he says, "I don't know if I can do this." Now this is a guy. He's in his 30s, and I said, "Why?" He said, now he's been out there, pretty significant. He's a very nice man. He's got a very good program. I said, and that's what I want to give all of us the message that I gave him. Of course you can do it. What the hell do you think the program's for? It is not for abstinence. It is for living. It is for meeting. If there is nothing better than what we've been given to the process of living life. And I said, bozos have been getting married for a very long time. I said, we have a group of 7 guys that were buddies in high school. We've all been married 53 years. We all got married in 1967. None of us have gotten a divorce. 4 of those men are sober over 40 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. Is that a statistic? How could you get one of them's 50 years in Al-Anon, which was my college roommate. I'd help train him, break him in. And it is, so the message to all of us is we can do this. Now, in order to do it, and I'm going to get back into it a little bit, you got to put God in it. When you put God in it, it is entirely different. One of the issues we all have with sponsoring people is when they're really upset, there's no God in it. They come over, you would not know they're members of Alcoholics Anonymous. They're having a conversation like a person on the street. You have to back them off, and get it down a little bit to remind ourselves that we operate differently. We don't operate alone. We understand that way you feel, but we don't operate just on feelings. We operate on spiritual principles. And it isn't just some sort of goofy game. It isn't some sort of trick where we're just trying to get you, to shave your head and sell books at the airport. This is really a different, it's an access to truth. It's an access to wisdom. It is a way of knowing. We want to get you connected to your knower. So if we would get connected to our knowers, give ourselves access within our marriage. You can do this. Anybody can do this because we're not doing it alone. We're doing it with everything we know in the program. It is, and I'll come back and talk a little bit more about things. So she's not perfect.
Now, what do you do with that? First of all, I'm melting down because I'm reliving a little of it, and I'm feeling so overwhelmed, and then I am not perfect. He's got that right. We're talking about relationships, and I know it's going to come out mostly that we're talking about marital relationships, but it isn't just. It's people that have partners. It's relationships in in business. It's relationships with your friends, and it's also relationships with your children. So, sort of broaden the idea. We will probably, I know I will be focusing more on the fact that we're married, but relationships is where life happens. We live in relationships. It's where we have our lessons. It's where we have our joys. It's where we find out who we are. Relationships are like mirrors that we hold up, and we can see who we are in relationship. When we first got married, we used the word divorce, and we used it as a tool to keep each other in line, or at least I did, but I think we both did. And so when we would get into an argument or some kind of a dispute or a real knockdown kind of fight, I'm not putting up with this, I'm going to divorce you. And it was a weapon, and it was an unkindness. I was not aware of how much of an impact it had. But after we were married about 4 years, I can remember the day, I can remember where we were sitting, and I can remember the profundity of it, I believe. I was really mad at him for something, and you know how we're always really mad, but we never can remember what it was when it's over. And this is a long time ago. And he said, let's just sit down and talk. And I did not want to talk to him. I really didn't want to have anything to do with him. Sit down and talk? I don't like you right now. I don't want to talk to you. And he said, no, could we just go out? So we went out on the porch. And he said to me, we've been throwing the word divorce around with some frequency. And he said, I'd like to make a deal with you today, and I'd like you to make it with me, that we will no longer use the word divorce in our marriage. And as you can tell, it's still profound. We won't use the word, because he said if we use the word, we might speak it into being. We're allowing it to be an option. If we don't use the word, we erase it from our vocabulary with each other. The option will not be as viable, or it won't be on the table any longer. I agreed. Still angry with him, but I agreed. It softened. The argument went away, whatever it was. And I don't think we have ever used that word since. And we've been married almost 54 years, so that's 50 years ago. We were young kids. I did not have that wisdom to make that wonderful gift and make that request, but he did. And I think you might want to look at it. It's a real kindness you do. You can transform that into threatening to quit a job all the time, or telling your kids if they don't behave, you're going to kick them out of the house. There's all sorts of ways you can extrapolate with that. But the idea is offer the kindness that we are going to stay together, that I'm still on board with you, that I'm still going to be a team member, and I'm still going to be with you. So that was a real gift that we gave each other. I think marriage is, sometimes I think it's just a crapshoot. I mean, we come together for reasons that most of us don't stay together for. We come together because we are in lust. We are just absolutely intrigued with this person. We think they are the best thing that's ever happened. sometimes aren't even thinking with our brains because we're in love. That love has to transform. And I think that, in my opinion, the only way that transforms is if you have a higher power working in the relationship with you. If you don't have God, you're sort of rudderless. You're floundering. And so I think it's just so important to have a power greater than the two of you, greater than the job, greater, oh my goodness, and then you add children. Oh, talk about that. Hours and hours we could talk about that. But what a blessing that is, and what that does for us. But I believe that relationships are about kindness, and that kindness, in my opinion, has to be centered in God, because that's where it comes from. There are so many times when we've been angry at each other or angry with our children, and if we didn't back up and if we didn't bring God into it, we could have done a lot of damage. We did do some damage. No, there's no perfect parent. There's no perfect spouse. There's no perfect relationship. But if you bring love in, and that's where I refer to God, and kindness, you have to have compassion. You have to have compassion for each other. You have to care for each other. You have to cherish. And I love that word. What do you do when you cherish something? You take care of it. You nurture it. You do good things for it. You're kind to it. And sometimes we weren't that kind to each other. And we said a lot of things that weren't nice to each other. But as Bob referred to, we both had a background. Our parents were both married for long periods of time until one of them passed away. We had faith. And faith is what really held us together. I have 2 letters that my husband, I think, has given me 3 cards in our married life. So, now, hold on. He's given me a lot of things in our married life. And cards are the least of them. But I have kept them. And I want to read this one, and I think it says what I have trouble doing this because I'm a crier. I think it says what we meant to each other and how we do hold each other. It was for my 30th birthday. I don't know if I can even read it, but here goes. Dearest Lynda, I love you. I love you more than I did when we dated, more than I did when we married, less than I will as we go along. 30 years together. We truly are not one, but not two. We have grown together in some healthy sense, but without trampling one another. I truly think we celebrate each other. That's such an important phrase to me. We have to celebrate each other rather than to find the things that don't work. Let's look at the wonder of who we each are. And let's not just do that on 30-year birthdays or on Mother's Day or on Father's Day or on Christmas. Let's do it every day. We have a little granddaughter who's 5 months old, and we look at her with such wonder. We are that little girl, and we don't always look at each other with the same kind of wonder. I said to Daniel, the father of this little one, I said, in about 3 or 4 years, she's going to do something and we're not going to think she's so cute because our judgment will come in as to how a 4 or a 3-year-old should behave. Let's keep looking at each other with wonder. Let's keep celebrating each other. To explain how much you have meant to me is impossible. You help provide a foundation and a stability from which I operate. You manage things so well as to leave me free to accomplish more than I ever could have dreamed of alone. You share my faith, my God, my recovery, my life. I bring you with me in all that I do. We are never alone. Your loving me has been the most important ingredient of my life. I have never doubted your love. You have a steadiness and a fidelity that is like warm water washing over me. You are beautiful physically and spiritually. You are sexy, pretty, delightful. I enjoy being with you more than anyone in the world. I never tire of you. It is difficult to communicate to another how much they mean to me. I messed that up, but you got it. I know that I take you for granted in some ways, but I know that is not really right. You are loved and appreciated. You have made our home a wonderful place. You have born and mothered our children in a way that I will always be grateful for. You bring so many things to this process, and you make me complete. I'm going to skip some of it. At this special mark of your 50th birthday, I find in my reflection of you and me and our lives together that I have a feeling of deep satisfaction. I have in many areas of my life a feeling that I need more, or that I'm not okay, or that it's not okay. I don't have that with you. You are okay, you are right, and you are my love. Happy birthday. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that the way I think deep down inside of us that we want to be all the time? But our egos get in the way and our lives get in the way, and we have circumstances that are difficult to handle. Life is not easy. It's difficult. But if we bring a kindness, a sweetness, a compassion into our lives, we're not going to do it all the time. But if we have the intention of doing it, I think we have a chance of doing it, at least in my experience, about 50% of the time. So I want to live my life on purpose. You know how we're little kids and we spill the milk and we go, I didn't mean to do it, it was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose. I want to do my life on purpose. And the purpose of my life is to be of service, to be a lover, to be a good wife, to be a good mother, to be a good grandmother, to be a good Al-Anon, to be somebody who gives tips away. And by that I mean, good morning, you look great. It's real easy to say I love you to your spouse when you're happy and everything's going well. But to say I love you when you just had a fight, or when you don't believe he acted the way he should have acted, then to say I love you, I think it's nurturing and it's kind, and I do believe it's like a salve. I hope that's not too sappy, but I really, really think my object in life is to be a kind child of God. And I'm going to pass it back to you.
I find in the conversation with my friends who have been in the program a significant period of time, well, it doesn't have to be a significant amount of time as some of us have, but as we move through life, if we're players in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, it becomes increasingly more important for us to practice the principles in all our affairs, to not have carve-outs, you know. And in some cases, people are successful enough in business that they put up with, you know, with a less good relationship than, you know, than they need. And they feel they don't have to because they're providing, you know, one very significant way, and they, you know, kind of push aside some of the stuff. But I find, you know, especially the men that I'm communicating with in AA, as time has gone on, our wives become more important. We start to appreciate. So we grew up at a time when if you had less than 7 children, you had a reproduction problem. I mean, if you were Catholic in our neighborhood, I mean, this was, quantity above quality was the kid my mother about, so I'm one of 7. And these women gave up careers. Women that were, my mother was, went through the Depression. She had a business degree in like 1930, or whatever, 39. Pretty unusual for, and then she was a Lutheran. She had to convert, and she had 7 kids. I mean, she was over her head, in some significant ways. And when our fathers all passed away, these matriarchs came forth, and they were matriarchs. They could have done anything. Many years ago, I was doing some est work, which is a kind of a personal transformation thing out of California. And I flew out to San Francisco, and I did we paid like 15, 20 grand to go to this 10-day workshop. And there were only like 5 of us in the workshop. And they had a day on women. And this guy is explaining to us how these women take little kids and teach them how not to kill people for ice cream cones. That they literally transform these little Genghis Khans into they socialize these little kids. And I said to him, if our mothers are that important, why do I have more awareness of my dad? And he said to me, because your dad is episodal. He comes and goes. He said, you swim in your mother. He said her influence is so pervasive that you don't see it. It's everywhere. It's that Chamberlain, 2 fish, saying, isn't the ocean wonderful? And the other fish says, what's the ocean? Okay. And that is oftentimes in marriage and oftentimes in family and oftentimes in parenting, the influence of the dad is more circumstantially pronounced. But the impact of the mother, which is, now this is a gift of the program, to be able to love. I mean, the program is a movement towards love. It is, the guys that I see, that's what I most admire, is as I really see, that's where we're moving towards. That's where we want to be, and we become softer. When we start out as hunter-gatherers, we're got a couple of rifles and some hand grenades and wearing fatigues, and we're going out to get some meat for the family. It is, as life goes on, I've always been self-centered. I've always been reasonably aggressive as to trying to get what I want. Would you like? I'd like more. Well, it's all you can eat for $2. I want $4 worth. Bob, you don't need $4. I want $4 worth. It is. Now, when you have that attitude, so as you get to be my age, you get to be invisible. People look through you. The world's run by 30 to 60-year-olds. It isn't. So some cases you get more invisible. But there is an opportunity for us to get some of the humility that the program talks about. Bill's treatise in the 7th step is one of the best treatises on humility that I think we have. Dr. Bob had a couple of sayings that he kept on his desk. And humility, when Bill talked about it, is the essence and basis of all the steps. What humility offers is the opportunity to not be as important as our self-centeredness would tell us we are. And so when humility is present, to be able to pass comments, to be able to, lots of us have sharp tongues. Not Cheryl, but there are a lot of sharp tongues in the room. It is to be able to let those things pass because it's not as important, and to be able to allow, my children grow in prominence, and to be able to be a cheerleader, to let your sponsees become So one of the great things for me is the hop's gone a little bit off my fastball, but I get to be a cheerleader and a participant in the lives of the people that I sponsor, in the lives of the people that I interact with. It is a gift to be able to still be on the team and to be able to still be connected with that. A long time ago, I heard someone, an Al-Anon, interestingly enough, talk about the breakdown of the steps, and he talked about the first 3 steps are to give up. 4 and 5 are to own up. 6, 7, 8, and 9 are to clean up, and 10, 11, and 12 are to grow up. And I think in many ways, a lot of us were never totally up to kind of appreciating how important marriage and children were, because we were so busy kind of building our careers and trying, to the first 5 years, at least the first 2 years, but for many of us, I was 23 when I came in. The circumstantial part of recovery is just imprinted on your eyeball. I mean, you're just looking for that job that works. You're looking for, the circumstances. And then after you start to get a few, when the problems start to recede, you get an opportunity to look more deeply. You get an opportunity to see the application of the principles of the program in a much more opportunistic way, so that they become more positive for us and something that we want to implement as we go through it. Humility and honesty and forgiveness. And forgiveness, as I get older, I tell you, not only do we not have the right to judge, so it really, in some ways, isn't even our job to forgive, but the blessing of forgiveness, it is, and she does that. I've been a little depressed lately. I get seasons where I'm down. They aren't clinical depressions, but I'm flat. And I kind of turned into a slob during the, what do we call it, the virus thing, COVID. And one of her faults, she takes the garbage out 6 times a day rather than use the lovely big container we have. She has.
Wait a minute. How important is that?
Oh, I'll get to that. Well, it's important that I find things that are wrong with you. We need balance, don't we? So this would drive her nuts, and she doesn't say anything about it. So there is an element of kindness and an element of compassion and an element of forgiveness that could be a lot different if she decided, to really get what she wants, and to go do this. And I keep thinking it's going to change, and until this moment, it hasn't changed. But that is the nature of life and relationship. There is, so we were talking about Bill Dixon to someone last night, Tim, and Bill was a wild-ass Irishman from Pittsburgh, part of a crew of guys that were really prominent in AA. I remember Bill telling me, he said, if I don't like you, you almost can't do anything right. But he says, if I like you, you almost can't do anything wrong. And we have that relationship with our children, and it isn't a blindness. It isn't like you don't call your kids on stuff that you think is reasonable and appropriate to call them on. But the fact is, there isn't anybody who doesn't make mistakes. There isn't anybody who's shooting it through the hoop every time they take a shot. So it's important for us to give that kindness to each other, to give that forgiveness to each other, to be there for each other in that depth. That's not that tough to do, and it really is part of what the program is. I really think in most ways, if you want to see some of the difference in it, I have never seen an argument about the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous at an AA meeting. Now, you go to a service meeting, and sometimes it's the opposite, because the traditions they aren't as intimidating on a personal level they're more like an argument about abortion with guys or something. I mean, it's important. They're discussing it, but their involvement is a hell of a lot different, and they're not facing that issue in their lives right now. So they're detached more from the thing, and they can have very strong opinions. Well, boy, if you were talking about yourself like an expert on the third step at an AA meeting, I mean, they'd pour gasoline on you. I mean, there would not be, who has the arrogance to be able to say, I am an expert on this particular aspect of recovery? I mean, most of us have a humility about our recovery. And I think within family and within relationships, that's one of the things that we start to grant each other, is that kind of basis and kindness and forgiveness and compassion and humility. And that is, I'll tell you, that's as nurturing an environment as you could possibly have for it. And it isn't hard. It's something that we do almost naturally in a practice of our program, and then we do at meetings and we do with our sponsees. Chamberlain, one of the great things Chamberlain always talked about, treat your kids like drunks. He always talked about treat them like sponsees, give them the responsibility for their actions, but not the judgment, not the, and straightforward, but not, that sort of thing. And it is, and I think that more and more as people get sober a longer period of time, it's almost as if we get deeper into the woods, that we're more willing to practice the principles in the area that we weren't doing quite so well in, that we pick it up. You hear people talk about, I have not been a daily, nightly inventory taker, but you start to hear people talk about all of a sudden doing the nightly inventory when they've been doing spot inventories or been using the 10-step or whatever the hell it is, because they just want their practice to be better. They just want, and I think they want to get closer. And I believe with every fiber of my body that what we're doing in the program of alcoholics, we're not trying to make Bob into Steve Lee. We're not trying to move me towards a model. Okay, what they're really doing is removing the obstacles that are in my way. When I dragged that perfect magnet through the junkyard of life and showed up here with a 30-foot ball of crap, and meeting by meeting and session by session and step by step, you helped pry off the material that I had accumulated until we found that perfect original manufacturing sphere in the middle, untouched, clean, and in place. And that is, I think, the epical journey of each of our lives. And that's what the program's about. It's about who are you? Who are you? Who are you in God? Who's your true self? Throw away the Maserati. Throw away the job. Throw away your hunting prowess. Throw away, who are you? And that is, where else would you go? So we get a new guy or a new gal, and we're going to go take them. What are you going to do? We're going to have them have a spiritual awakening. Oh, give me a break. But we believe that. We've experienced it. It is not BS. We really think that if someone goes through the process, and what is that? And I think it's getting in contact with who you really are. And in that spot, you're God. In that spot, the difference between you and God is non-existent. There is a way of knowing. And I think that's what our program offers more than anything else, is an access to knowing. We have always had a knower. Give me my AA talk. But if you are sitting in a meeting and someone says something that just, bam, and your soul goes, oh, yeah. It doesn't go, I like that. I think I'll write it down. No, writing it down. No, just, you've never heard it before. And you just know it's so. Who knows? And that's what the gift we're given in this program. And when we start to access that, we can no longer do some of the things, use some of the tools, the negative tools that we've been using. We just don't, we walk away from them because they are no longer appropriate. I don't want a knife in my toolbox. don't need it, And so more than anything else, the gift of relationship is the mirror that Lynda talked about. It is, why is it so difficult? The primary relationships in life you can't escape. You can't, if you're in marriage, you may get divorced, but you often, even after divorce, you don't escape it. It is a mirror put up in front of you that shows you things that you wouldn't see in any other way. Your children are a mirror. You look into their eyes. You say something, some of the crummy things I have said to my children in my early days, I just can't believe that they came out of my mouth. Some of the things I've done in relationships, I just am deeply ashamed of those things. But once you have touched the wisdom, once you have touched the truth, once you have had that transformation, once you know, it ain't for free ever again. It is, you're changed. And what a wonderful way to change. And someone say, well, what did you do? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I did anything. It's like you walked away from it. It is that. So, I don't have anything else.
I don't know if we would still be married if we didn't have the program. I don't.
What the hell does that mean?
Later. I don't know the answer, but I do know that the program gave us the tools that we needed. The principles that are embodied in the 12 steps, if you apply them to your lives, which we're asked to do in step 12, it's impossible to do it in all our affairs as far as I'm concerned, but I sure can try. And I think that if it weren't for the program, I don't think we would still be around. And if we were, well, if we didn't have the program, Bob probably wouldn't be alive. If we didn't have the program, I can't imagine what I would be like. But I do have the program, and I do have the principles, and I do have a daily commitment to try to just, I don't know if the words be better, but be more gentle, be kinder, be a listener, be a compromiser. Appreciate what I have rather than what I don't have. Looking at life with a softness and a gentleness and a kindness, and that's what I want to do all the time. And I think that's the gift that we give each other. And as we've gotten older, and of course, we are, the preciousness of our relationship is something that, how can you appreciate the preciousness of it when you're younger? When you're younger, you're raising kids and you're working hard, and they're the busiest times of your life. You're drinking out of a fire hose. But when you get older, you realize how precious it is, and how you hope you have it for a long time. And you know that you won't. So we value each other, we care for each other, we take care of each other. We listen to each other. We laugh with each other. We play. We have missed this. Not so much this, but this. I stood in the back of the room last night and I just looked at the room was empty. Someone was with me, and I said, I forgot how much I miss this. And I saw the, Lee's pictures, and we grew up in the program. We are children of Alcoholics Anonymous and as a result of Al-Anon. Be kind to each other. Appreciate today. We don't know what tomorrow. We don't know what it will bring. We don't know if we'll have it. But I think the nicest thing we can do is to just stay present and stay present with God. So thank you for the opportunity of letting us share our little bit of wisdom, and it's great to be with all of you. Thank you.